Screencast 59. Long-running reports. Good afternoon, Dynamics AX content creators. Today we're going to talk about a problem we've seen from some of our customers, and it's dealing with timeouts when running reports. Now, what we're seeing is that people are building reports. Developers are having a great success in running these reports in their development and test environments. However, once they move these solutions out into production where they're dealing with a much larger data set, the reports are timing out for customers. And this is in large part due to the calling sequence used for those solutions. So what we did was introduce a new base class for report data providers. This came out in the R2 release that is set up to specifically support these situations where you have reports that take an excessive amount of time to construct the report data set. Some candidates for this are things like the trial balance report, the customer aging report, and these reports fall under this category because simply there's so much business logic used behind the scenes to construct a report data set. And along with that, there's relatively large data sets that they're iterating over. They're essentially taking more than 10 minutes to actually create the data set. And when this happens, SSRS essentially will time out. The service calls happening behind the scenes will give up. These 10-minute service thresholds, these limits, are put in place to protect your environments from any malicious services that somehow end up on your machine. And previous to the R2 release, we recommended that people extended these timeouts to allow time for the reports to complete. However, we've come up with a much better solution, and today we're going to demonstrate how to take advantage of these new base classes so that you can utilize reports that take more than 10 minutes to run even in your production environment. So the symptoms of this, when this is necessary, is simply the fact that you're getting complaints from your customers that reports are timing out. They're failing, they're never returning, they'll fail interactively or in batch after 10 minutes because they are not set up to run longer than that 10-minute threshold. Now you can extend these time periods, but it's not a recommended practice to do that. We'd prefer you just modified your solutions very slightly, and I'll show you how easy it is to do today, so that they're capable of taking longer than 10 minutes to complete the construction of the report data set. So that's the symptom. Of course, the cause is that default timeout when an AX is installed is 10 minutes. These are service timeouts imposed at the SSRS layer and also in the AOS service communication stack. And we prefer you keep them at 10 minutes. It's just a safe thing to do. You can always extend those if you think that would get you around the issue, but no matter what, as far as scale is concerned, at some point your production environment is going to continue to grow, and if you move it to 10 minutes, from 10 to 12 minutes, at some point that's not going to be enough either. So we recommend that you simply migrate your solutions to a pre-processed report data set, and again, I'll show you how to do that. Very simply, it's easy to just kind of describe the steps involved in migrating. Essentially, you change the base class that your RDP is, your report data provider class is derived from SSRS report data provider base, to SSRS report data provider preprocessed temp DB. This is a new base class that was introduced with R2. It works very much the same way as the original base class. It just tells our kernel code to execute the calling sequence in a different order. Another thing you'll need to do is modify your table types. The temporary table in which you use to store the data needs to go from an in-memory temp table to a temp DB table. And if you happen to be migrating an existing solution into a preprocessed report, you're going to want to perform a full compile of IL after making that change to that table type. This will ensure that you're getting the correct interop code when you're executing the report. Of course, you'll need to restart the AOS after compiling IL layer, and you'll want to introduce a controller class if it's not there already to actually do the orchestration of the report calling. And finally, the last thing you'll need to do is just update your menu items to, instead of pointing to the report, actually point to this controller class that you introduce. So let's quickly jump into a demonstration of just how to do this and how easy it is. So here I have just a very simple RDP class. It does nothing more than call into this query, custom balance query. And again, this is a traditional RDP class derived from SRS report data provider base. It's got a temp table here, and if we look at that temp table, we will see that it is of type in memory. All we do is return that temp table, and in the process report method, we're doing nothing more than iterating over that query result and inserting that into the temporary table. So I've added some code here to slow things down a bit so that it's clear, we can clearly see the differences in calling sequence. So let's go ahead and run that report. I'm not going to enter into any parameters, but I will run it. So this report now, because of that sleep cursor, is going to take about a minute. You'll see that we get the dialog with the loading wait panel, the loading cursor here immediately after running the report. This is because with the current solution, the calling sequence is that when you execute the menu item and you say OK on the report run dialog, we're actually making a service call immediately out to SSRS to initiate the process of running the report. This causes the report viewer to come up, and we have a queuing service here waiting for the response to be done so that the result can be returned from the SSRS server. So we'll give this a few seconds to complete. Again, this is taking a little bit longer because I added a sleep call in there. And you'll see the results come back. Everything we expect. Perfect. Okay, let's contrast that with another solution which I've created, which is simply an offset of that first solution we saw. You'll see it basically has a similar naming construction. Big difference is that it extends the SRS report data provider preprocess tempdb base class. I'm also using a different temporary table here to store my data. This temporary table, as opposed to being in memory, is of type tempdb. Beyond that, I'm doing nothing more or any more complicated than I was doing with the initial solution. Still returning a temporary table. And here I'm going to actually sleep longer. I've added a call to sleep actually 11 minutes on this process report. So this would be a case of a report if constructed with a normal report provider class would time out whether I was running it interactively or through batch. Finally, I've also introduced a controller class to orchestrate the execution of the report. I'm doing nothing more than simply starting the operation. Very simple, and there are many examples of this in our out-of-box reports. So finally, I have my output menu, and it's pointed to my class. Let's go ahead and run this report. And no parameters again, and we'll click OK. Now, you'll notice immediately something's different here. Where before we got the dialog, the report viewer form, to pop up immediately, here you don't see that dialog. AX is actually busily processing that data set before it even reaches out to the SSRS server. So you won't see an AX form here showing up with the report viewer until the data set is complete. Now this is an ideal solution for any batch executions or any interactive executions where you expect this report to take a long time. However, I must caution you that if you're building this into an interactive solution, your customer needs to be aware that they won't be able to use the client. The client will be non-responsive while the data set is being constructed. Essentially, all of the AOS resources are being dedicated to constructing that data set right now. In my example, they're simply sleeping, but in most cases, they'd be busily processing the data set. So it's 10:06 now. We'll come back in a few minutes and see this report complete. Okay, we're back. It's back and it's 10:16, 10 minutes, and here we go. The dialog comes up. The report is immediately rendered for the user. We're beyond that 10-minute timeout window, and our reports render with no problems. So to recap, all we did was convert the base class. We changed the table type of the in-memory of the temp table. We did a full compile of the IO layer. Restart iOS, introduce controller class, and modify the menu items. And that's about it. Deploy your reports, and now you should be able to avoid those 10-minute timeouts and be good to go for your customers. Again, we recommend you do these types of reports in batch because it just offers a better end user experience. Your call. Either way, your reports will now run, and you're no longer burdened by that 10-minute limit to data processing. Here are some resources in case you have some more issues or topics you'd like to see discussed. Again, my name is TJ Vassar, and thank you for watching.